Welcome back to Bargirl Baddies. Today's story is about a rule that gets whispered in expat bars across Thailand, passed between seasoned travellers like folklore, ignored by optimists, and learned the hard way by romantics. Never spend more than 3 days with a bar girl. It sounds cynical, maybe even cruel, but our storyteller today, a guy we'll call Jake, 29 years old from Vancouver, would tell you it's not cynicism, it's survival. Jake came to Thailand in February 2024 for a 2-week holiday, burnt out from his job in tech sales, nursing a breakup that left him feeling invisible. He'd heard about the 3-day rule from a buddy who'd lived in Bangkok years ago. The rule was simple. You can have fun, you can enjoy someone's company, you can pay for their time, but never let it go past 3 days. Never let it become real. Because the moment you do, the moment you start believing the performance is genuine, you're no longer a customer, you're a mark. Jake thought the rule was paranoid. He thought he was different, smarter, more emotionally intelligent than the guys who fell for the game. By day 4 with a girl named Fern, he'd already broken the rule. By day 14, he'd rented an apartment. By week 3, he'd quit his job back home. And by the end of 2 months, he was sitting in a police station in Pattaya, trying to explain how 28,000 Canadian dollars had disappeared from his account, while the woman he thought loved him was nowhere to be found. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. And if you've ever ignored advice you wish you'd listened to, hit that like button and subscribe, because Jake's about to walk you through exactly how 3 days turns into a nightmare. Jake will take it from here. I'll be straight with you. Vancouver in January is miserable. Not miserable like poverty or war, just miserable in that slow, grey, soul-draining way that makes you question if you're actually living or just going through the motions. Rain every single day. Not the dramatic thunderstorm kind, just that constant drizzle that seeps into your bones and makes everything feel damp and heavy. I'd been working in tech sales for 5 years. Good money, decent apartment in Yaletown. The kind of life that looks impressive on paper. The paper doesn't keep you warm at night. Emma left me in October 2023. We'd been together 3 years. She was a graphic designer, beautiful, smart, had her life together in a way I pretended to. We lived separately, but spent most nights at my place because it was nicer, closer to downtown. Had a view of False Creek if you stood in the right corner of the living room and craned your neck. She left because I was always working. Always on my laptop during dinner. Always checking my phone during movies. Always prioritizing the next sale, the next commission, the next bump in my quota. She said I treated her like a roommate with benefits instead of a partner. She said she felt invisible. She wasn't wrong. The breakup was clean. Too clean, maybe. She packed her stuff over a weekend while I was at a sales conference in Seattle. Left her key on the kitchen counter next to a note that said she hoped I'd figure out what actually mattered before it was too late. I read that note maybe 100 times over the next few months, always thinking I should feel something bigger, something more dramatic. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of trying to care about software solutions for mid-sized businesses. Tired of pretending I was building towards something meaningful. Tired of coming home to silence. My buddy Connor had lived in Bangkok for 2 years back in 2019. He'd moved there after his own breakup, worked remotely for a while, came back with stories that sounded too good to be true. Cheap rent, incredible food, beautiful women, perfect weather. But he also told me about the rules. The unspoken codes that expats follow to survive the nightlife scene without getting destroyed. One of them was the 3-day rule. He explained it over beers at a pub in Gastown one night when I was deep in my post-Emma depression. He said, you can go to the bars, you can have fun, you can even pay a bar fine and spend time with a girl, but never let it go past 3 days. 3 days is the limit. After that, you start catching feelings. After that, they start seeing you as something more than a customer. After that, the boundaries blur and someone always gets hurt. He said it like gospel. Said he'd seen guys lose everything because they thought they were special. Thought they'd found the one girl who was different. The one girl who actually liked them for them, and not for their wallet. I remember laughing it off. Telling him I'd never be that guy. I worked in sales. I could read people. I knew when someone was running game on me. Connor just shook his head and said, that's what they all think. By January 2024, I was drowning. Work was the same meaningless grind. My apartment felt like a museum of a life I'd stopped living. I'd order Uber Eats, eat in front of my laptop, fall asleep watching YouTube videos about places that weren't Vancouver. One night I stayed up until 4 in the morning watching videos of expats in Thailand. They'd show their apartments, their routines, their nights out. Everything looked colourful and alive, in a way my life hadn't felt in years. The comments were full of guys saying it was the best decision they'd ever made, that they wished they'd done it sooner, that the West had become too expensive and too lonely and too grey. I booked a flight on impulse. February 10th, Vancouver to Bangkok. 2 weeks. Just to reset. Just to feel something other than numb. My boss told me to take the time, said I'd been grinding too hard and needed a break. My mum asked if I was running away from my problems. I told her I was running toward a solution. I didn't actually know what that meant, but it sounded better than admitting I just wanted to be somewhere where the sun actually shone. I landed at Suvarnabhumi Airport on a Tuesday afternoon. The heat hit me the second I stepped outside, thick and wet, the kind of heat that makes your shirt stick to your back and your lungs work harder. But I loved it. I loved that it was different, that it was real, that it made me feel something. I took a taxi to my hotel in Sukhumvit. The driver barely spoke English, but he smiled a lot and had Thai pop music playing on the radio, upbeat and bright even though I couldn't understand a word. We drove through Bangkok and I pressed my face to the window like a kid. The traffic was insane. Motorbikes everywhere, families of 4 packed onto a single scooter, street vendors selling food from carts on the side of the highway. Everything was colour and movement and noise and life. My hotel was near Nana Plaza, down a side street called the Soi that was too narrow for 2 cars to pass comfortably. There was a 7-Eleven on the corner, a massage place with pink lights, a restaurant with plastic chairs on the sidewalk. I checked in, dumped my suitcase in the room, and immediately went back out. I couldn't sit still. I walked for hours, down Sukhumvit Road, into the side streets, through night markets where people sold everything from phone cases to fried insects. I ate pad thai from a cart, 40 baht, less than $2 Canadian, and it was the best thing I'd tasted in months. I bought a big bottle of Leo beer from a 7-Eleven and sat on a curb watching motorbikes zip past and thought, I'm actually here. I actually did it. The first 3 days were standard tourist stuff. I went to the Grand Palace and got yelled at by a guard for wearing shorts. I took the BTS to Chatuchak Market and got lost for 3 hours in a maze of stalls selling vintage cameras and live rabbits and knockoff designer shirts. I ate everything I could find. Mango sticky rice, boat noodles, som tam that made my eyes water. I went to rooftop bars in Siloam and watched the sunset turn the sky orange and pink while the city lit up below me. It was exactly what I needed. Space distance. A reset button. But at night, back in my hotel room, the loneliness crept in. I'd see couples at dinner, groups of friends laughing over beers, and I'd feel like a ghost floating through their happiness. On my 4th night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the sounds of the Soi outside, motorbikes and voices and music, and I felt the same emptiness I'd felt in Vancouver. Different country, same hollow feeling. Around 11, I got up, put on jeans and a t-shirt, and walked down towards Soi Cowboy. I'd read about it online. I'd seen it in videos. I knew what it was. A street full of go-go bars, neon lights, girls in bikinis dancing on stages, the whole setup. I told myself I was just curious, just wanted to see it for myself, just wanted to people watch. But really, I was lonely, and the bars were full of people, full of light and energy and laughter, and that felt better than sitting alone in a quiet room. Soi Cowboy was exactly what I expected, and somehow still surprising. The neon was overwhelming, pink and blue and red lights reflecting off the wet pavement, music pouring out of every doorway, each bar trying to be louder than the one next to it. Girls standing outside calling to guys walking past. Come inside, handsome. Just one drink. We have beautiful girls. Most of the guys were older, 50s and 60s, white guys in cargo shorts and polo shirts. I felt out of place, but also anonymous. Just another Farang wandering through. I ducked into a bar called Electric Blue because it seemed less aggressive than the others. Smaller. Maybe a dozen girls, a DJ booth in the corner, a bar running along one wall. I sat down and ordered a Singha. The bartender, an older Thai woman who barely looked at me, poured it and took my money without a word. The beer was cold and cheap, and I nursed it while watching the room. Girls danced on a small stage, not particularly enthusiastic, just going through the motions. A few older guys sat at tables with girls on their laps, buying lady drinks, laughing too loud. That's when Fern sat down next to me. She wasn't the most beautiful girl in the bar, not the tallest, not the one wearing the most makeup or the flashiest outfit. But there was something about her smile. It felt real. Or maybe I just needed it to be real. She was wearing jean shorts and a white tank top, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, minimal makeup. She looked like she could have been a university student if you saw her on the street. She sat down without asking, close enough that our knees touched, and said, "Where are you from?" "Vancouver," I told her. "Canada." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, Canada. I love Canada. So cold, right? You come to Thailand to be warm." "Something like that," I said. She laughed. It was a good laugh, the kind that made you want to laugh with her. She asked how long I was staying. I told her 2 weeks. She asked if it was my first time. I said yes. She said she could tell that I looked too serious, that most guys who came to Soy Cowboy were either too serious or too drunk, and I seemed like the serious type. I asked if that was a bad thing. She said no, just different. She said her name was Fern, like the plant. She asked mine. I told her Jake. She repeated it, Jake, stretching out the vowel, and said it was a good name, easy to remember. We talked for 2 hours. I bought her drinks. Lady drinks, the bartender called them, 70 baht each, about $3 Canadian. Fern would order one, drink it in 2 sips, and order another. I didn't care. The conversation felt real in a way nothing had felt real in months. She told me she was from Udon Thani, a city in the northeast I'd never heard of. She said she'd been working in Bangkok for 3 years. She talked about her family, her younger brother who was studying engineering at a university in Khon Kaen, her parents who ran a small rice farm. She showed me photos on her phone. Her and her brother as kids, grinning at the camera in school uniforms. Her parents standing in a field, the sun setting behind them. I told her about Vancouver, about the rain, about my job that I hated, about Emma, though I didn't use her name, just said I'd come out of a long relationship and needed to get away. Fern listened. Really listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't check her phone, didn't look around the bar for other customers. She looked me in the eyes and nodded in the right places and touched my arm when I said something that seemed to move her. It felt like a conversation you'd have with a friend, not a transaction. Around 1 a.m, the bar started emptying out. Fern said she had to go soon, that the mama-san would get upset if she stayed too late without a bar fine. I didn't know what a bar fine was, she explained it. If a customer wanted a girl to leave with them, they paid the bar a fee, usually around 1,500 baht, and then the girl was free to go. It wasn't explicitly for sex, she said, though obviously that's what most guys expected. It was just paying for her time away from work. I didn't ask her to leave with me that night. I wasn't ready. I just told her it was nice to meet her, that I'd probably come back tomorrow. She smiled and said she hoped so. She kissed me on the cheek, a quick peck, and walked back toward the other girls. I paid my bill and walked back to my hotel in a daze. For the first time since I'd landed in Bangkok, I felt something other than loneliness. I felt connection. I went back the next night, and the night after that, 3 nights in a row. Fern was there each time, always seemed genuinely happy to see me. We'd talk for hours. I'd buy her drinks, buy drinks for her friends, spend a few thousand baht without blinking. On the 3rd night, Connor's warning echoed in my head, never more than 3 days. I was already at 3. I should have walked away, should have thanked her for the company, left a good tip, moved on with my holiday. But Fern suggested we leave the bar, go somewhere else, maybe a night market or get food. She said she was tired of sitting in the bar, that she actually wanted to spend time with me outside of work. I paid her bar fine, 1,500 baht, about $50 Canadian. It felt like nothing. We left Electric Blue together and walked down Sukhumvit toward Asok. The streets were still busy, vendors selling grilled meat and fake designer bags, tuk-tuks honking, the chaos of Bangkok at midnight. We ended up at a street food stall near the BTS station. Plastic stools, fluorescent lighting, a menu in Thai that I couldn't read. Fern ordered for both of us. Somtam, grilled chicken, sticky rice. We ate with our hands, and she laughed at how badly I handled the spice. My mouth was on fire, but I didn't care. I was happy. After we ate, we walked along the pedestrian bridge over Sukhumvit Road. The traffic roared below us, a river of headlights and taillights. Fern leaned against the railing and looked out at the city. She said she loved Bangkok, but sometimes it felt too big, too fast. that she missed home. I asked why she didn't go back. She said there was no work there, no money, that if she went back she'd be stuck on her parents' farm making nothing. She said she didn't love working in the bar, but it was the best option she had without a degree. We talked about dreams. She said she wanted to open a shop someday, sell clothes or beauty products, something that wasn't about men buying drinks and touching her. I asked if she'd ever been close to making it happen. She said no, that she could never save enough, that there was always something, her brother's tuition, her parents needing help with the farm, her own rent and bills. She said it felt like she was running on a treadmill, working hard but never actually moving forward. I wanted to help her. God, I wanted to fix everything right then and there. But I held back. I didn't offer money. I just listened. We ended up back at my hotel around 3 a.m. I asked if she wanted to come up. She said yes. We didn't have sex. She said she didn't do that on the first proper date, that most guys expected it, but she wasn't like that, that she wanted to get to know me first. We just lay on the bed, fully clothed, talking until the sun started coming up. She fell asleep with her head on my chest. I stayed awake, watching her breathe, listening to the sounds of the swai waking up outside, and thought, this is different. She's different. I'm different. Day 4. The rule was broken. I'd crossed the line Connor warned me about, but it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like the first real thing that had happened to me in years. Fern started texting me the next morning. Good morning with a flower emoji. Later, a photo of her lunch, KO pad with a fried egg. She asked how I slept, if I had plans for the day, if I wanted to meet up later. It felt like a relationship. It felt real. I extended my flight, changed my return from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, told myself I could work remotely if I needed to, that my boss wouldn't care as long as I was hitting my numbers. But the truth was, I was staying for her. I was staying because for the first time since Emma left, I didn't feel invisible. Fern saw me, or at least I thought she did. By the end of the first week, Fern had stopped going to Electric Blue altogether. She told me she didn't need to anymore, that she'd rather spend her time with me than sit in a bar dealing with drunk tourists. I asked if she was sure, if she'd be okay financially. She smiled and said she'd be fine, that she had some savings, that this felt more important. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. We fell into a routine that felt almost domestic. She'd stay at my hotel most nights. We'd wake up late, have breakfast at a cafe down the Soy, spend afternoons wandering the city. She showed me her Bangkok, not the tourist version. We'd take the BTS out to One Nut and eat at restaurants where I was the only foreigner, where the menus had no English and the food cost 30 baht a plate. We'd walk through neighbourhoods where laundry hung from balconies and kids played football in narrow alleys. She'd translate signs for me, explain things I didn't understand, hold my hand on the SkyTrain like we were an actual couple. Her friends started appearing in our orbit. Nam was 24, bubbly, always talking about opening a hair salon someday. Ploy was 28, quieter, said she was studying English at night school so she could get a job at a hotel. They both worked at bars near Soy Cowboy. They'd meet us for dinner or drinks, always friendly, always treating me like I was part of their crew. I'd pay for most things because I could and because it felt good to be generous. They'd thank me, call me kind, say Fern was lucky. I felt accepted. I felt like I'd found my people. By week 2, I'd made a decision that I knew was reckless but felt inevitable. I told my boss I was resigning. We had the conversation over Zoom, me sitting in my hotel room with the air conditioning rattling, him in his office in Vancouver looking confused. He thought I was joking at first. Then he thought I was having a breakdown. He offered me a leave of absence, said I could take 3 months unpaid, come back when I was ready. I told him I wasn't coming back. I told him I'd found something real in Bangkok, something worth staying for. He wished me luck in a tone that made it clear he thought I was making a massive mistake. My mom cried when I told her. She said I was throwing away everything I'd built, that I was running away from my problems, that problems follow you wherever you go. I told her I wasn't running away, I was running towards something. She asked, what? I said happiness. She said happiness doesn't cost your entire life. We didn't talk for 2 weeks after that. Connor sent me a message when he heard. Just 3 words. Remember the rule. I didn't reply. I found an apartment in Thong Lo through a Facebook group for expats. 1 bedroom, furnished, 35,000 baht a month, about 1,300 Canadian dollars. It was more than I needed to spend, but I wanted something nice. Something that felt like a real home. The building had a pool, a gym, a rooftop terrace with views over the city. I signed a 6-month lease and paid 3 months up front. Fern came with me to see it before I committed. She walked through the rooms, bouncing slightly, touching the furniture, opening the closets. She said it was beautiful. She said she loved it. She didn't ask if she could move in. She just started bringing her things over. First, it was a toothbrush, then some clothes, then a stuffed bear she said her daughter had given her. Wait. Daughter? I'd been seeing Fern for 2 weeks and she'd never mentioned a daughter. She saw my face and immediately teared up. She said she was sorry, that she should have told me earlier, that she was scared I'd judge her. She showed me photos on her phone. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with Fern's eyes and smile. Her name was Ploy, same as Fern's friend, which confused me at first. Fern explained that her daughter lived with her parents in Udon Thani, that the father, her ex-boyfriend, had gotten her pregnant and disappeared, that she'd had to leave her daughter behind to come to Bangkok for work because there was no other way to support her family. She cried telling me this. Real tears, not the performative kind. She said she sent 15,000 baht home every month, that she called her daughter every week but hadn't seen her in person in 4 months because she couldn't afford the trip. She showed me video calls, her daughter in a school uniform saying Sawadee Ka to the camera, Fern blowing kisses and speaking rapid Thai. I couldn't follow. My heart broke. I asked why she hadn't told me sooner. She said she was ashamed, that most men didn't want a woman with baggage, that she thought I'd leave if I knew. I held her and told her I wasn't going anywhere. I told her I didn't care about her past, that everyone has a history, that what mattered was now. She looked up at me with wet eyes and said I was different from every other man she'd met. She said most guys just wanted one thing, but I actually cared about her as a person. She kissed me, and I felt like a hero. Like I was actually doing something good with my life, instead of just making rich people richer in Vancouver. That night, lying in bed in our new apartment, Fern curled against me. I thought about how quickly everything had changed. 3 weeks ago, I was eating takeout alone in Yaletown. Now I was living in Bangkok with a woman I was falling in love with, building a life that actually felt meaningful. The 3-day rule seemed like paranoid nonsense. Connor didn't know what he was talking about. This was real. This was different. The first request for money came in week 3. Fern's motorbike had broken down. She needed 8,000 baht to fix it. She didn't ask directly, just mentioned it while we were having breakfast. Said she didn't know how she'd get around, that taxis were too expensive. I offered immediately. Told her not to worry about it, that I'd transfer her the money. She hugged me and said I was too kind, that she'd pay me back as soon as she could. I told her she didn't need to. We were together now. Partners. Partners helped each other. A week later, it was her brother's university tuition, 15,000 baht. She showed me screenshots of messages from her mom, said the payment was due and they didn't have it, that her brother might have to drop out if they couldn't come up with the money. I didn't hesitate, sent her the money right there from my phone. She cried and thanked me and said her family would be so grateful that they'd pay me back someday. I told her not to worry about it. Then it was school supplies for her daughter. 3,000 baht. Then her phone broke and she needed a new one. 12,000 baht. Then her mom needed medicine, 5,000 baht. Each request came with a story, with evidence, with gratitude. And each time I said yes. Because this was what love looked like, wasn't it? Taking care of someone, helping them through hard times, being the person they could rely on. By week 5, I'd spent over 15,000 Canadian dollars beyond my normal living expenses. Rent, food, going out, helping Fern, buying rounds for her friends when we all went out together. It was adding up faster than I'd anticipated, but I still had savings. I still had the money I'd made over 5 years in tech sales sitting in my account. I told myself it was fine. This was what the money was for. To live. To build something real. Fern started going out without me. At first it was just a few hours. She'd say she was meeting Nam or Ploy for dinner, that it was girl time, that I'd be bored anyway. She'd come back around midnight, a little drunk, smelling like cigarettes, and crawl into bed next to me. I didn't mind. I wanted her to have friends, to have a life outside of us. But then midnight became 2 in the morning, then 3. Then sometimes she wouldn't come home until the sun was coming up. I'd ask where she'd been. She'd say with her friends. I'd ask which friends. She'd get defensive, say I was being controlling, that she wasn't my property just because we lived together. We'd fight, not screaming fights, but tense, uncomfortable fights where neither of us said what we actually meant. Then she'd cry. She'd say she was sorry, that she'd been drinking too much, that she just needed space sometimes because living with someone was new for her. Then we'd make up. She'd be affectionate, attentive, would make me breakfast and joke around, and everything would feel okay again. Until the next time. Her phone was always face down, always on silent. She'd get notifications constantly, the screen lighting up, and she'd grab it quickly, take it to the bathroom or out to the balcony to reply. When I asked who was messaging her so much, she'd say it was her family, or the girls, always with a smile, always with a deflection. I wanted to trust her. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this was just cultural difference, that Thai people use their phones differently, but the feeling gnawed at me. The feeling that something was off. One afternoon, I was alone in the apartment and her phone was on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower. It buzzed. I looked. I shouldn't have, but I did. A message in Thai from a contact saved as just a number. I couldn't read it, but I saw the tone, the emoji, the casualness. Another message came through. Then another. I felt sick. I put the phone back exactly where it was and sat on the couch trying to convince myself it was nothing. That I was overreacting, that looking at her phone made me the bad guy, not her. When she came out of the shower, I asked her directly. I said I saw messages coming in. Asked who was texting her. Her face hardened. She said it was none of my business, that I didn't own her, that if I didn't trust her then maybe we shouldn't be together. The fight that followed was worse than the others. She accused me of being jealous and insecure. I accused her of hiding things. She said if I was going to be like this, she'd just leave. I backed down. I apologized. I said I did trust her, that I was just stressed about money, about being so far from home, about everything changing so fast. She softened. She said she understood, that it was hard for both of us, that we just needed to communicate better. We had sex that night. It felt like a ceasefire more than intimacy. Week 6.9 started hinting that she needed help with rent. She never asked directly, but the seeds were planted in conversation. We'd be at dinner, and she'd mention that her landlord was threatening to kick her out, that she was 2 months behind, that she didn't know what she was going to do. She'd look at me with hopeful eyes. Fern would change the subject, but later, in bed, she'd bring it up. She'd say Nam was her best friend, that she was really struggling, that maybe we could help, just this once. I sent Nam 10,000 baht. She messaged me a long thank you in broken English, said I was an angel, said she'd never forget this. She never paid it back. Ploy needed money for her English course. She'd been talking about it for weeks, how she was serious about leaving bar work, how she needed to improve her English to get a proper job. The course was 8,000 baht a month for 3 months. She showed me a brochure, glossy and official looking, photos of classrooms and smiling students. She didn't ask me to pay for it. Fern did. She said it would change Ploy's life, that this was her chance to get out, that we had the money, so why not help? I paid for 3 months up front, 24,000 baht, about 800 Canadian dollars. Ploy hugged me when I told her, said I was changing her life. I felt good about it. I felt like I was actually making a difference. By the end of week 7, I checked my bank account and felt my stomach drop. I'd gone through almost 28,000 Canadian dollars in less than 2 months. The number on the screen didn't feel real. I sat on the balcony of our apartment, the Bangkok heat pressing down on me, and tried to do the math. Rent was 1,300 a month. Food and going out, maybe another 1,000. That was less than 5 grand. Where had the rest gone? I opened my banking app and scrolled through transactions. Transfers to Fern, transfers to Nam, transfers to Ploy. Cash withdrawals I barely remembered making. Charges at bars and restaurants. A new phone I'd bought when mine got stolen at a club in RCA. A gold bracelet I'd bought Fern for her birthday, 10,000 baht, because she'd mentioned once that her ex never bought her jewellery. I felt the panic rising. My inheritance from my dad. My 5 years of savings. My entire financial cushion. I was bleeding out and I hadn't even noticed because each individual transaction seemed reasonable in the moment. 8,000 here, 15,000 there. It adds up. It always adds up. I confronted Fern that night. Told her we needed to talk about money. She was on the couch scrolling through TikTok. She looked up at me, annoyed that I was interrupting. I sat down next to her and said we needed to slow down on spending, that I'd gone through more money than I'd planned, that we needed to be more careful. Her face changed. the warmth drained out of it. She asked if I was saying I couldn't afford to take care of her. I said that's not what I meant, that I just needed us to be more mindful. She said if I was worried about money, then maybe I didn't care about her as much as I claimed. She said all the other men she'd been with never complained about helping her. The words hung in the air. All the other men. I asked what she meant. She backtracked immediately, said she meant previous relationships, years ago, that she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But the damage was done. The spell was cracking. I asked how many other men. She said it didn't matter, that it was the past. I asked if she'd lived with them too. She got angry. Said I had no right to judge her, that she'd done what she needed to survive, that if I couldn't handle her past, then I should leave. We didn't speak for 2 days. She slept on the couch. I'd hear her on the phone late at night, speaking Thai in a low voice, sometimes laughing. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell I was doing. Wondering if Connor had been right. Wondering if I'd thrown away my entire life for a fantasy. On the 3rd day, she came into the bedroom and apologised. She said she'd been stressed, that her mom had been pressuring her about money, that her daughter was asking why she hadn't visited. She said she took it out on me, and that wasn't fair. She said she loved me. It was the first time she'd said it. I love you. I wanted so badly for it to be true that I ignored every warning sign flashing in my head. I told her I loved her too. We made up. Everything felt okay again. For about 3 days. Then she started going out again. This time, she barely bothered with excuses. She'd just say she was going out, would be back later. I'd ask where. She'd shrug. I'd ask when she'd be home. She'd say she didn't know. One night, I woke up at 4 in the morning and she wasn't there. I checked my phone, no messages. I called her. It rang once and went to voicemail like she'd declined it. I called again. Same thing. I lay in bed feeling my chest tighten, feeling the panic building, imagining her hurt, imagining her in trouble. At 6 in the morning, I heard the door open. She came in carrying her heels, makeup smeared, smelling like men's cologne and cigarettes. I asked where she'd been. She said at a friend's place. I asked which friend. She said I didn't know them. I asked why she smelled like cologne. She said we'd been at a club. I asked why she didn't answer my calls. She said her phone died. I looked at her phone in her hand. The battery icon showed 60%. She saw me looking and her face hardened. She said I was being paranoid and controlling, that she couldn't deal with this right now, that she needed to shower. She locked herself in the bathroom for an hour. When she came out, she got into bed without looking at me and passed out immediately. I sat on the balcony watching the sun rise over Bangkok. The city looked beautiful from up there, peaceful. Below me, I could hear the sounds of the neighbourhood waking up, motorbikes starting, vendors setting up their carts, people heading to work. Normal life happening while mine fell apart. I checked my bank account again. 22,000 Canadian dollars left. I burned through almost 40 grand in 8 weeks. I thought about my dad, about the inheritance he'd left me, about how disappointed he'd be if he could see what I'd done with it. I thought about Connor's warning. 3 days. I'd made it to day 4, and now I was 2 months deep in a situation I didn't know how to escape. Fern went out again that night, said she needed to clear her head. She didn't come home. I stayed up until morning, calling and texting, getting no response. Around noon the next day, she finally replied. One message. I need space. I'm staying with Nam for a few days. I didn't hear from her for 3 days. On the 4th day, she came back to the apartment. Not apologetic, not sheepish, defiant. She said she'd been thinking about us, about what she wanted, about whether this was working. I asked if she'd been with someone else. She didn't answer. She just started packing her things. I watched her stuff her clothes into a bag. Watched her take the jewellery I'd bought her. Watched her open the drawer where I kept cash for emergencies and take the stack of 1,000 baht notes. I should have stopped her, should have said something, but I just stood there, frozen, watching my life collapse in real time. She paused at the door with her bag over her shoulder. She looked at me for a long moment, and I thought maybe she'd say something, explain something, give me some kind of closure. Instead, she just shook her head and left. The door clicked shut, and I was alone in an apartment I'd rented for us, surrounded by furniture I'd bought for us, living a life I'd built for us. Except there was no us. There never had been. I spent the next 2 days in bed, didn't eat, barely slept, just replayed everything in my head, every conversation, every red flag I'd ignored, Every moment I'd chosen to believe the fantasy instead of facing the reality. On the third day, I forced myself up, showered, got dressed, went to the nearest police station. I brought everything: bank statements showing the transfers, screenshots of messages, photos of us together. I tried to explain to the officer at the desk, a young guy who spoke decent English, that I'd been scammed, that this woman had manipulated me, had taken my money under false pretenses. He listened patiently. Then he asked if I'd given her access to my bank account willingly. I said yes, but she'd manipulated me. He asked if I'd sent her money willingly. I said yes, but I thought we were in a relationship. He asked if I had any contracts or agreements about the money being loans. I said no. He looked at me with something between pity and annoyance. An older officer came over, saw what was happening, and pulled me aside. He spoke better English. He said, "I understand you're upset, but what crime do you want us to investigate? You gave money to a woman you were seeing. She left. This happens every day in Bangkok. If we arrested every bargirl whose boyfriend claimed they were scammed, we'd have no room in the jails." He wasn't cruel about it, but he was matter of fact. He said, if I wanted to pursue it civilly, I could hire a lawyer, but that I'd spend more on legal fees than I'd ever recover. He asked if I understood. I nodded. He patted my shoulder and said, "Go home, Farang. Learn from this. There are many fish in the sea." I walked out of that police station feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. Not angry, not even sad, just humiliated. Completely, utterly humiliated. I went back to the apartment and it felt like a crime scene. Everything reminded me of her. I broke the lease 2 months early, lost my deposit, didn't care. Booked a flight back to Vancouver, the cheapest one I could find, 2 connections, 20 hours of travel. I packed everything I owned into the same suitcase I'd arrived with. On my last night in Bangkok, I sat on the balcony one final time, looking out at the city, and thought about how 3 days had turned into 2 months, how my entire life savings had evaporated, how I'd ignored every single warning because I was desperate not to be lonely. The flight home was brutal, long and cramped and full of time to think. I landed in Vancouver on a grey morning in late April. The rain was falling. Of course it was. My mom picked me up at the airport. She didn't say "I told you so." She just hugged me and helped me with my bag and drove me back to her place in silence. I'm living in her basement now. 39 years old, back in my childhood home, starting over from scratch. I got a job through a staffing agency, contract work doing financial analysis for a mid-sized firm. It pays half what I used to make. I'm rebuilding my savings one paycheck at a time. The money isn't even the worst part. Money you can earn back. It's the trust. I don't trust myself anymore. I don't trust my judgment. When someone's nice to me, I wonder what they want. When the barista at the coffee shop remembers my order, I assume she's angling for a bigger tip. I'm suspicious of everything and everyone, and I hate what that's done to me. Looking back, I can see every single red flag. The way Fern never wanted to meet during the day at first. The way her stories about her family kept changing slightly. The way none of her friends ever invited me to anything real, just nights out where I paid for everything. The way the affection came and went in direct correlation to how willing I was to open my wallet. The way she'd pick fights whenever I hesitated to give money, then love bomb me back into compliance. It was textbook, and I fell for every single move. I ignored it all because I was lonely. That's the truth. I'd rather be used than be alone. I'd rather pay for companionship and pretend it was love than face the silence of my own company. And there are people in this world who can smell that desperation. They're professionals. They've done this 100 times. They know exactly what to say, exactly when to cry, exactly how much to ask for before you start questioning things. Fern wasn't evil. She was just doing her job. And I was just another client who forgot he was a client. Connor was right about the 3-day rule. It's not about being cynical or cold. It's about recognizing that when money is the foundation of an interaction, time doesn't make it more real. Time just makes it more expensive. 3 days, you're still clear-headed enough to see it for what it is. By day 4, you start writing a different story in your head. By week 2, you're in love. By week 8, you're broke and alone wondering how you got there. I was that guy, the guy everyone warned me about, the guy I swore I'd never be. And now I'm back in Vancouver, living in my mom's basement, working a job I'm overqualified for, trying to rebuild a life I torched because I couldn't handle being lonely for a few more months. If you're thinking about doing what I did, if you're sitting somewhere grey and cold thinking Thailand is the answer, just know this: the rule exists for a reason. The old guys in the bars who seem jaded and cynical, they're not bitter. They're just expensive. They learned the hard way, and they're trying to save you the tuition. Listen to them. Respect the 3 days, because once you cross that line, there's no going back. You just become another story like mine. Another cautionary tale. Another guy who thought he was special until he realized he was just another transaction. That's the lesson. That's what $28,000 bought me. The knowledge that I'm not special, that I never was, and that sometimes the loneliest thing in the world is being with someone who's only there because you're paying them to be. The host's voice returns, calm and measured, wrapping up Jake's story with empathy rather than judgment. Jake's experience is far from unique. Every month we hear from men who thought they'd found something real in Thailand's nightlife districts, only to discover they'd found a transaction dressed up as romance. The 3-day rule isn't about dehumanizing the women who work in these bars. Most of them are doing what they need to do to survive, to send money home, to support families in regions where opportunities are scarce. It's not about vilifying them. It's about protecting yourself. The rule exists because the environment is specifically designed to blur boundaries. The bars, the lighting, the music, the attention, it's all calibrated to make you feel special, to make you forget that this is a business transaction. 3 days is enough time to enjoy the experience without losing perspective. After 3 days, feelings start to develop. Patterns start to form. You start telling yourself stories about what this could become instead of seeing it for what it is. Jake wasn't stupid. He was a successful professional with years of experience reading people in sales. But he was vulnerable. He was lonely. He was desperate for connection. And in that state, even smart people make terrible decisions. Fern wasn't a monster. She saw an opportunity and took it. In her world, in her economy, Jake was a resource. He had money. She needed money. The affection, the girlfriend experience, the emotional connection. That was the service she was providing. Jake paid for that service and then forgot he was paying for it. The tragedy is that both of them were trying to solve legitimate problems. Jake needed to feel valued and connected. Fern needed to survive and support her family. But the collision of those needs created a situation where someone was always going to get hurt. In these environments, it's almost always the person who mistakes the business for a relationship. If you're watching this and thinking it could never happen to you, ask yourself honestly, have you ever made a decision based on loneliness? Have you ever ignored warning signs because you wanted something to be true? Have you ever spent money to feel valued? We all have. Jake just paid a higher price for it than most of us will. The 3-day rule isn't cynicism. It's pattern recognition. It's wisdom earned through collective painful experience. It's the old-timers in the bar trying to save you from becoming another story like this one. If you've got a similar experience, or if you've seen this happen to someone you know, share it in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if any part of Jake's story felt familiar, if you recognized yourself in his decisions or his rationalizations, hit that subscribe button. Sometimes the best way to avoid a mistake is to learn from someone else's first. Take care of yourselves out there. Guard your heart. Guard your wallet. And remember, if someone seems too interested in you too quickly, especially when money is involved, they're probably interested in something other than you. Stay safe. Stay smart. And respect the 3-day rule.